Ah, the legendary Kaxor. Perhaps you have heard whispers of his name? No? Well, let me tell you about the most feared warrior across 7 galaxies, who currently haunts the corridors of our beloved Galactic Hub Station Nexus-9. And by haunts, I mean literally stalks around like some brooding phantom from those ridiculous human horror entertainments. You see, Kaxor stands at an impressive 3 meters tall, with crystalline armor that seems to absorb light itself. 4 arms, each capable of wielding plasma weapons that could vaporize a small moon, and skin that radiates with ancient power markings. The sight alone sends most species running in the opposite direction, screaming their various types of excretions out. But oh, the stories. The legends. Have you heard about the Battle of Centauri Prime? They say Kaxor single-handedly defeated an entire armada of Vex Thor warships. Personally, I think the number grows with each retelling. Last week, some Quavarian trader claimed it was 2 armadas. Next week, it will probably be the entire Vex Thor fleet, plus their grandmother's personal yacht. Here on Nexus-9, we have developed quite the sophisticated system for avoiding our resident ancient warrior. The station's AI sends subtle warnings through environmental controls. Temperature drops 3 degrees when he enters a sector. Everyone suddenly remembers urgent appointments elsewhere. Lighting dims slightly in a corridor. Must be time for that mandatory evacuation drill no one scheduled. The funniest part. The various species have their own unique ways of avoiding him. The Zylaxians flatten themselves against walls, trying to become one with the station's infrastructure. The Merovians pretend to be decorative plants, which would work better if they weren't bright purple and occasionally sneezed. Even the mighty Kralex warriors, who pride themselves on fearing nothing, suddenly develop intense interests in their personal communication devices when Kaxor appears. The station's commerce level has practically developed its own choreography. The moment Kaxor's heavy footsteps echo through the promenade, merchants smoothly close their stalls, customers vanish into shops, and maintenance bots conveniently malfunction in his path. It is quite the coordinated dance of avoidance, I must say. But why such fear? Besides the obvious tales of his military prowess, there are the rumors. They say he once made a chronovore cry by simply staring at it, that he can speak 20 dead languages and cause their extinction personally, that his favorite beverage is liquid nitrogen with a splash of neutron star essence, served in a cup made from a compressed black hole. The truth? No one really knows. Kaxor keeps to himself, occupying the highest level of the station's residential tower. Some say he came to Nexus-9 seeking redemption, others believe he is serving some sort of self-imposed exile. The more dramatic among us insist he is waiting for a prophesied apocalyptic event that only he can prevent. Until recently, that was how things stood. Everyone avoided Kaxor, Kaxor avoided everyone, and life on Nexus-9 continued in its carefully orchestrated dance of mutual avoidance. But then, something changed. Or rather, someone arrived who didn't know the steps to our little dance. Someone who would turn our entire station's social dynamic upside down. Enter Zara Chen, fresh-faced human diplomatic intern, approximately 1.6 meters of pure, oblivious courage wrapped in a standard-issue diplomatic corps uniform. Now, when I say fresh-faced, I mean she had literally just stepped off the transport vessel, datapad in hand, looking around Nexus-9 with those ridiculously expressive human eyes like she had discovered a new candy store. Of course, no one had bothered to update the human diplomatic corps about our resident ancient warrior. Why would they? It was simply understood across the galaxy that you avoided Kaxor like you would avoid a supernova, or your mother-in-law during mating season. The first encounter. Oh, it was spectacular in its complete defiance of all station protocol and common sense. Picture, if you will, the usual scene in the central atrium. Kaxor, moving through space like a mobile void, his crystalline armor casting prismatic shadows. The standard evacuation procedures in full swing, species diving behind pillars, into shops, some even attempting to squeeze themselves into waste disposal units. But not Zara Chen. No, this human, this tiny speck of flesh and bone, actually walked toward him. The collective gasp from the hidden onlookers could have depressurized the entire level. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice echoing in the suddenly empty atrium. "I think I am lost. Could you help me find the diplomatic offices?" The temperature dropped 10 degrees. Literally. The station's environmental controls always got a bit dramatic around Kaxor. 3 maintenance bots short-circuited from sheer shock. Kaxor stopped. All 4 of his arms went still. His head turned with the slow inevitability of a dying star, ancient power markings pulsing with what we all assumed was barely contained rage. And what did this human do? She smiled. At Kaxor. The security feeds from that moment have been copied and shared across 17 different species networks as an example of either incredible bravery or terminal stupidity. I am Zara, she continued, apparently immune to the waves of menace radiating from the ancient warrior. Today is my first day as a diplomatic intern. The station's layout is quite confusing. For exactly 23 seconds, nothing happened. The kind of nothing that makes you question your life choices and update your will. Then, Kaxor spoke, his voice resonating like thunder trapped in a crystal cave. You are not afraid. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of such obvious contradiction to the natural order that it seemed to confuse even him. Should I be? Zara asked, tilting her head in that peculiar way humans do when they are genuinely curious. You look like someone who knows their way around the station, and I really need to find the diplomatic offices before I am late for orientation. The gathered crowd, still hiding but now completely enthralled, witnessed something unprecedented. Kaxor, the destroyer of armadas, the terror of 7 galaxies, the warrior who supposedly ate black holes for breakfast, actually seemed uncertain. One of his 4 arms moved, causing several hidden observers to faint, and pointed toward the upper levels. Level 47, North Quadrant. The lifts are behind you. Thank you, Zara beamed at him, and I mean literally beamed. Humans have this strange ability to project joy like a weapon. I really appreciate your help. I am terrible with directions. On Earth, I once got lost in a shopping mall for 3 hours. She walked away, her boots clicking on the pristine floor, humming some human tune, completely oblivious to the fact that she had just shattered every social norm on the station. Kaxor watched her go, his ancient power markings flickering in what we later decoded as utter bewilderment. The moment she disappeared into the lift, he turned and strode away, but not before several observers swore they saw him shake his head, as if trying to dislodge the encounter from his consciousness. It took exactly 47 minutes for the news to spread across the station. The human who didn't run. The human who smiled. The human who treated the most feared warrior in 7 galaxies like a helpful stranger at a transport hub. What followed over the next few station cycles was the most bizarre courtship of friendship any of us had ever witnessed. And by bizarre, I mean it completely redefined our understanding of human survival instincts, or rather, their apparent lack thereof. Zara, it seemed, had decided that Kaxor would be her friend. Not that anyone asked him about this arrangement. She simply began appearing wherever he was, armed with what she called coffee and an endless supply of questions about everything from his armor to his favorite color in the quantum spectrum. The first major cultural mishap occurred in the station's nutrition center. Zara, spotting Kaxor at his usual isolated table, marched over with her tray and sat down. The entire facility went silent. Even the automated serving units stopped humming. "Want to try my sandwich?" she asked, holding out what appeared to be compressed organic matter between 2 slices of processed grain. Kaxor stared at the offering like it was a miniature explosive device. "I consume the essence of dying stars." "Cool. Is that like an energy drink?" "This is turkey and avocado. Very traditional Earth food." The mighty warrior, who had faced down entire armies, found himself utterly defenseless against human hospitality. In what became known as the Great Sandwich Incident, Kaxor actually accepted a piece of the food. His power markings flashed in what we now know was surprise when he discovered he enjoyed it. Then came the language barriers. Zara had an unfortunate habit of using human idioms, which translated through the universal translators with chaotic results. When she told Kaxor he was cool as a cucumber, he spent 3 cycles adjusting his thermal regulators, concerned that his body temperature had dropped to dangerous levels. "Your face looks like a thundercloud today," she announced one morning, causing Kaxor to frantically check his reflection, worried that his ancient powers were manifesting in meteorological phenomena around his head. But the real breakthrough came during what we call the dance disaster. The diplomatic corps was hosting an interspecies cultural exchange event. Zara, in her infinite wisdom, decided Kaxor needed to learn the human electric slide. Picture, if you will, a 3-meter-tall ancient warrior with 4 arms and crystalline armor, attempting to slide step to human rhythm music. The security feeds of this event are now the most highly guarded entertainment content on the station. Right foot back. No, your other right. Now slide left. Zara's instructions echoed through the recreation deck. I have conquered solar systems, Kaxor protested, his power markings pulsing in what we had learned was embarrassment. I do not slide. Everyone slides, Zara insisted. Come on, it is like commanding an army, but with your feet. The most astonishing part, he tried. Actually tried. His movements were about as graceful as a Thoraxian cargo ship attempting a barrel roll, but he tried. Gradually, impossibly, things began to change. Kaxor's power markings started showing new patterns, ones our xenolinguists identified as amusement, curiosity, and something dangerously close to contentment. His responses to Zara's constant chatter evolved from monosyllabic grunts to actual conversations. The station's inhabitants watched in fascination as the dreaded warrior began to soften. Not physically, thank the cosmic forces, but in subtle ways. He stopped causing environmental controls to malfunction with his mere presence. The temperature no longer dropped when he entered a room. Once, someone even swore they saw him nod in greeting to a terrified Xylaxian merchant. Humans, I heard him mutter one day, all 4 arms gesturing in bewilderment, are the most peculiar species in the galaxy. They fear nothing because they understand nothing, yet they understand everything because they fear nothing. Coming from Kaxor, this was practically a love poem to humanity. The station's betting pools immediately exploded with wagers on when he would adopt his first human mannerism. The odds were heavily favoring him attempting a high five within the next cycle.of course. The universe has a peculiar sense of humor. Just when everyone was getting comfortable with the idea of a less terrifying Kaxor, the station decided to have what humans would call a total meltdown. Not the emotional kind, mind you, but the actual, potentially about to vaporize everyone into cosmic dust kind. It started with a seemingly innocent power fluctuation in the lower engineering decks. The kind of thing that usually means someone plugged too many personal grooming devices into the same power circuit. But then the station's quantum core began experiencing what our chief engineer later described as hiccups. Yes, hiccups. The most advanced power source in 7 galaxies was having hiccups. Warning sirens blared across all 97 levels of Nexus-9. The station's AI, usually so composed, was speaking in what sounded like interpretive poetry mixed with differential equations. Not a good sign. Station core destabilization imminent, announced the AI, its voice modulating between baritone and soprano. Probability of survival calculating. Error. Recalculating. Would you like to hear a joke about quantum mechanics? That is when we discovered our emergency protocols had one slight flaw. They were designed for species that responded rationally to danger. What we had not accounted for was Zara Chen, who, upon hearing the alerts, did not evacuate like a sensible being. No, she ran toward the engineering decks. Kaxor, who had been mediating in his quarters, likely contemplating the mysteries of the universe, or perhaps trying to understand why humans called it a parking driveway when you drive on a parkway, detected her movement. How? Well, let us just say he had been keeping tabs on his human friend through the station's security systems. Not that he would ever admit to such sentimental behavior. Zara, his voice boomed through the communication systems. The evacuation pods are in the opposite direction. The quantum core is destabilizing, she replied, breathing heavily as she ran. I took a quantum mechanics class in university. I might be able to help. You took 1 class. I got a B+. The gathered crowds near the evacuation points witnessed something unprecedented. Kaxor, the ancient warrior who had spent centuries perfecting the art of intimidating solitude, charged through the corridors after a human intern. His crystalline armor left scratch marks on the walls as he ran, power markings blazing like a supernova. They reached the engineering deck just as the quantum core began what looked like an enthusiastic attempt to turn itself inside out. The sight was both terrifying and mathematically impossible, which made it even more terrifying. The containment field is failing, Zara announced, fingers flying over the control panels. We need to reverse the polarity of the quantum flow, but the controls are locked down. That would require overriding the main security protocols Kaxor observed, all four arms flexing instinctively, and dealing with the defense systems. The ones shooting plasma bursts at anything that moves? Yes, those might be a problem. The defense turrets chose that moment to demonstrate their effectiveness, unleashing a barrage of energy bolts that would have turned most beings into scattered atoms. But Kaxor? He stepped in front of Zara, his crystalline armor absorbing the blasts like they were minor annoyances. "I will handle the defense systems," he declared. "You focus on the core." What followed was the most improbable collaboration in station history. Kaxor, the feared warrior, playing living shield while simultaneously dismantling defense turrets with precise strikes from his four arms. Zara, the human intern, rattling off quantum equations and making adjustments to the core systems with the confidence of someone who either knew exactly what they were doing or was exceptionally good at pretending. The station's security feeds captured every moment, broadcasting the scene to the evacuation areas where the station's inhabitants watched in fascination. Several species began recording what they assumed would be their last moments, only to create what would become the most viral entertainment content in recent galactic history. Quantum flow at critical levels, announced the AI. "Would anyone like to hear my entire collection of knock 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 jokes before we all cease to exist?" "Not now," Zara shouted, her fingers still dancing over the controls. "Kaxor, I need you to hit that panel with precisely 7.3 megajoules of force." 7.3, he questioned, deflecting another plasma burst. "Trust me. B+ in quantum mechanics, remember." And here is the truly astonishing part. Kaxor, the warrior who trusted no one, who had spent centuries ensuring no one could get close enough to betray him, actually listened to a human intern. He struck the panel with exactly 7.3 megajoules of force, his power markings glowing with what might have been trust, or possibly just the reflection of the quantum core trying to turn the station into abstract art. The core pulsed, spun, and then, with a sound like 1,000 Moravians singing opera underwater, stabilized. The defense systems powered down. The AI stopped trying to tell jokes. "Core stabilization achieved," it announced, sounding almost disappointed, returning to normal operations. But seriously, does anyone want to hear a knock 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 joke? In the sudden silence, Zara turned to Kaxor with that characteristic human grin. "Well, that was exciting. Do you want to grab coffee? I think the nutrition center should be reopening soon." The ancient warrior, covered in scorch marks from plasma fire, his crystalline armor slightly scuffed, stared at her for a long moment. Then, in front of all the security cameras, in view of the entire station watching through the feeds, he did something that would be talked about for centuries. He laughed. In the aftermath of what became known as the Great Hiccup Crisis, something changed in the dynamic between Kaxor and Zara. They were sitting in the observation deck, watching the swirling nebula clouds outside the station. The place was, as usual, deserted except for them, though several beings were probably hiding behind the decorative plasma columns. "You trusted me," Zara said, sipping her coffee. "With the quantum core, why?" Kaxor's power markings pulsed with colors we had never seen before. "Because you never gave me a reason not to." "Is that why you never trust anyone else?" "Because they gave you reasons." The ancient warrior was silent for so long that 3 different species tried to sneak out of their hiding spots, thinking he had gone into some sort of stasis. But then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Have you heard of the Battle of Centauri Prime?" he asked. "The one where you defeated an entire armada? The station talks about it constantly." 2 armadas, actually his power markings flickered with what might have been amusement, but they never tell the full story. "Those armadas? They were once my allies, my friends, as you would say." The hidden observers collectively held their breath. Even the station's environmental controls seemed to quiet down to listen. The Vexthor Confederation was created to protect the weaker species from invasion. I helped build it, led it, trusted them. His crystalline armor dimmed slightly. Then I discovered they were using our protection as a cover to enslave the very species we were supposed to defend. When I confronted them, they turned their weapons on me. "So you fought them," Zara said softly. "I destroyed them. Every ship, every betrayer. But the cost." All 4 of his arms clenched. "The cost was my belief in connection, in trust, in what you humans call friendship. And that is why you came to Nexus-9. To isolate yourself. To protect myself. To protect others. Power, strength, these things attract those who would misuse them. Better to be feared than to risk betrayal again. Zara set down her coffee cup with a decisive click. That is the stupidest thing I have ever heard. Several gasps echoed from behind the plasma columns. The temperature dropped 3 degrees out of sheer habit. Excuse me, Kaxor's power markings blazed. You heard me. You let some betrayers from centuries ago decide your entire future. You gave them power over every relationship you could have had. Every friendship you denied yourself. They are still winning, Kaxor. The ancient warrior stood, his full height casting shadows across the deck. You do not understand the weight of betrayal. No, you do not understand the weight of isolation. Zara stood too, all 1.6 meters of her facing off against his towering form. You think being alone protects you. It just makes you easier to defeat. You said it yourself, you trusted me today, and guess what? The station did not explode. The universe did not end. We actually made a pretty good team. The hidden observers were now recording everything. This conversation would probably become required viewing in diplomatic training across the galaxy. And what if that trust is betrayed? Kaxor asked, his voice surprisingly uncertain. Then you deal with it and try again. That is what humans do. We fall down, we get up, we keep trying. We do not hide in space stations making everyone's environmental controls malfunction because we are afraid of getting hurt. For a moment, Kaxor's power markings displayed such a complex array of emotions that the station's xenolinguists would spend months trying to decode them. Then, slowly, they settled into a steady, calm pulse. Humans, he said, shaking his head, are either the wisest or the most foolish species I have ever encountered. Why not both? Zara grinned. Now, are you going to sit back down and finish telling me about your past, or do I have to stand here looking up at you? Because my neck is starting to hurt. The legendary warrior, terror of 7 galaxies, defeater of 2 armadas, actually chuckled and sat down. Very well, my friend. Let me tell you about the time I first learned to pilot a star cruiser. Life on Nexus-9 changed dramatically after the Great Hiccup Crisis. It started small, like most galactic revolutions do. First, the environmental controls stopped having emotional breakdowns whenever Kaxor entered a room. This alone saved the station enough energy to power a small solar system. Then came the truly shocking changes. Kaxor began acknowledging people in the corridors. Not with long conversations, mind you, but with slight nods that no longer caused spontaneous evacuation drills. The Zylaxians stopped trying to merge with the walls. The Merovians gave up their terrible decorative plant impressions. Even the mighty Kralax warriors began actually looking up from their communication devices. The station's commerce level developed a new choreography. When Kaxor approached, merchants still closed their stalls, but now it was to hurry out and offer him samples of their wares. His apparent enjoyment of Zara's sandwich had sparked a station-wide competition to introduce him to new cuisines. The sight of an ancient warrior carefully sampling a Thoraxian sugar puff while 4 different species anxiously awaited his verdict became a common occurrence. Your power markings suggest you are experiencing digestive discomfort, Zara noted one day, watching him sample his 7th consecutive dessert offering. I consumed a neutron star for breakfast once, Kaxor replied, his markings indeed pulsing with what looked suspiciously like a sugar rush. I can handle a few sweets. The station's betting pools shifted from wagering on evacuation times to predicting which human habit Kaxor would adopt next. The day he accidentally said cool in response to a Merovian's trade proposal nearly crashed the betting system. But the real transformation extended far beyond our humble station. News of the unlikely friendship between a human diplomatic intern and the galaxy's most feared warrior spread across the 7 galaxies. The security feeds of their various adventures became required viewing at diplomatic academies. The incident with the quantum core was analyzed in military strategic courses, though most instructors focused less on the technical aspects and more on the unprecedented trust between species. Kaxor's former reputation for inspiring terror gradually evolved into something more complex. Yes, he was still the warrior who had defeated 2 armadas, but now he was also known as the being who learned to electric slide. His name began appearing in diplomatic messages not as a threat, but as an example of how barriers between species could be broken down. other ancient warriors, scattered across the galaxies in their own self-imposed exiles, began emerging from their isolation. The first time another legendary warrior arrived at Nexus-9 seeking advice on interspecies friendship from Kaxor, the station's AI almost short-circuited from the sheer improbability. "You want me to teach you how to interact with others?" Kaxor asked the visitor, his power markings pulsing with bemusement. "I heard you know how to high-five," the warrior replied solemnly. Zara, naturally, took this as an opportunity to organize what she called friendship workshops. The sight of multiple ancient warriors attempting to master the art of casual conversation while Zara demonstrated proper fist-bumping technique became the most popular entertainment in station history. As for Kaxor and Zara themselves, their friendship became the stuff of legends, though considerably less dramatic ones than before. They could often be found in the observation deck, sharing those human sandwiches and swapping stories. He taught her ancient battle strategies. She introduced him to human dance moves. He helped her understand quantum mechanics beyond that B+ level. She helped him understand why humans found cat videos so entertaining. The station itself seemed to thrive on their friendship. The AI stopped trying to tell knock-knock jokes during emergencies, the environmental controls maintained a consistent temperature, and the various species learned that perhaps ancient warriors were not so terrifying after all. Especially when you caught them humming human pop songs in the lift. Some say that the true measure of civilization is not its technological achievements or military might, but its capacity for connection. If that is true, then perhaps the most significant battle Kaxor ever won was not against those two armadas, but against his own isolation. And his greatest ally in that victory, a human intern who never learned to fear him. Though he still maintains that consuming a neutron star was easier than learning the Macarena.